I am from Etsy, and I'm going to speak to you about an area of security which is often not really well discussed, certainly not well understood, and in my opinion is one of the reasons that security organizations fail in the ways that we see them failing in the headlines all the time. So it's a very short talk, obviously it's only 30 minutes. This is kind of an extract of a talk which is more about kind of 90 minutes long, so we're going to be breezing through a few things. Most of the areas have much more depth beneath them. If you want to chat more, come find me at the Syndis booth, and we can certainly go into anything that, that people want. This has already all been said. As you might know from my accent, I'm not a native Icelander. I live in New York. It's not a New York accent. And my background is in technical work. It's in exploitation. It's in attack. I've now taken all of this knowledge that I've used over the last 15 years of breaking into organizations and taking that to use other organizations to help them build teams that actually provide security in a meaningful way rather than just provide lip service to security. I realize Etsy is not necessarily so well known in Iceland. Here's some numbers just to kind of give you a rough feel. We're a marketplace. We sell handmade and vintage items. We do, kind of around $2 billion worth of business a year. We've got, 20-odd million sellers. We've got about 20-odd million buyers, 2 million sellers, offices in 7 countries, people buying and selling from almost every single country in the world. Over 800 employees, a third of those employees are engineers. So while it might look like we're an online marketplace, the reality is we're actually an engineering company in disguise. Of those, 14 of those are my security engineers. They form the teams that do the technical security work. There's a further around 75 people that do a lot of the member-facing security. So in terms of scale, we kind of, we're middling size. And what are we going to talk about? Well, we're going to talk about some common organizational security mistakes that people make. We're going to talk about what even is security culture and why is it important. We're going to talk about how we can foster your own security culture, how you can begin to build security culture at your own organizations. And then I want to share a lot of the lessons and approaches that we've taken at Etsy so that you don't have to make the same mistakes that we've made. Big disclaimer up front. Culture is really specific to an organization. You can't take the lessons or the learnings which Etsy has and pick them up and drop them into your organization and expect them to just magically work. You can take them as some forms of inspiration. You can take them as patterns or anti-patterns. Take the things that work for you. Don't expect to take them wholesale and then just apply to your organization. So I've been up for about 48 hours now, so I'm going to make the biggest mistake that anyone can make speaking in Iceland, ask for audience participation. So here, who thinks that their organization, the people that they work with, their company, has a team that's dedicated to security? More than one person whose full-time job is only security. All right, smattering of hands. OK, who's got kind of an individual who's tasked with all of security? Few more. Who's got security? Who feels that security is kind of a portion of other people's jobs? They're IT people and they're doing bits and pieces. OK? Who can admit that no one at their company cares about security? That's good. Oh, there's a hand. There's a hand. At least one honest person. And who's got no idea at all what their organization's security posture is? At least that's encouraging. So we're going to come back to a lot of that later. But if we're talking about security, I try and give what I feel is the kind of 50,000-foot view of security. What is the kind of the biggest picture aspect of security that I can kind of explain it in a non-technical way? So circles are always the best way to explain things. So we've got technology, and that's a circle. We've got society, and that's also a circle. And the area that those two circles intersect, that's security. Without society, it's just bad technology. It's just bugs. And without technology, it's just crime. It's just people being shitty to each other. It always has been there, and it always will be there. Information security is that intersection between technology and society. And as society becomes more dependent on technology, the space which security needs to apply to increases. So at 50,000 foot, this is how I explain security. This is how I think about security. And from this perspective, by definition, when we've defined security as involving people, it's easy to see that when we're looking for solutions in security, we need to consider people alongside technology. And often, certainly in the security industry, the people that try and sell you things, they try and sell you technology. They try and sell you a magic box that will take away everything, every worry. Put this in, it's technology, it will do magic. You need to consider people. And unfortunately, the time when a single person can be responsible for an organization's security is long over. I'm not going to take credit for this quote. This is actually a very good friend of mine, Laura Bell, and she said this at one of her talks that she gave that I was speaking directly after, and it just summed it up really well. The time when a single person can be responsible for technology is over. It's up to everybody. And that means that even if you're not part of a security team, when you're in an organization, you're responsible for that organization's security. And as such, if everybody's now responsible for security, this is a shared responsibility. Building an effective security organization means that we need to create a security culture within which to share that responsibility. And so this is really what I'm going to be kind of talking around for the next few slides is, what is security culture? You know, it sounds great, sounds like a fancy thing that everybody wants one, but what actually is a security culture? The best definition of engineering culture that I can find is this one by Carl Wiegers. His book, Creating a Software Engineering Culture, is a great book. You should read it. I think it's actually available online for free on Google Books, so you can kind of dig it out and read it if you don't want to buy it in soft copy. But the definition is great. Culture includes a set of shared values, goals, and principles that guide behaviors, activities, priorities, and decisions for a group of people working towards a common objective. So we can take that as the framework, and that common objective is obviously one of security. There's nobody in organizations that want that organization to do well that wants that organization to have poor security. Everybody has that shared goal of having good security overall. So really, security culture is just a specialized engineering culture. It's a specific way of defining an engineering culture. And rather than having like a really wordy example, it's really just understanding that people have as much to do with security as technology. And as an industry, we've done a really bad job of explaining that a positive security culture is necessary to have effective security. Most of the security industry is focused entirely technically because that's what they can sell. And so, unfortunately, what we see as classical security approaches are not really conducive to building security culture, not building a security culture that people can actually buy into, not that, that people can buy into who aren't security engineers. In fact, classical security often does quite the opposite. It creates situations that try and dissipate culture, that actually makes people want to avoid buying into security. Classical security is often about restrictions. The classical security engineer, if they're given a security problem, if they're given a risk, they will look to impose restrictions on the organization to take that risk away. And having worked for organizations building their security working for organizations building their security teams, as well as attacking organizations and breaking all the assumptions that have been made by that organization's security model, I can tell you right now, restricting people is not an effective way to do security. They will work around you. Excuse me. Classical security also means blocking people from doing actually what they want to do, their real job. What is it that they're there to do? They're not there to spend all of their time thinking about security. They're there to do one of the multitude of other things that the business needs to make money. If your security program focuses on blocking people from doing what they want to get done, they will circumvent you. They will ignore you. I've seen it happen time and time and time again. If you block people, they will ignore you. What this creates is a divergent view of security. The security team thinks this is how the world works in our organization and this is where our risks are. The reality, they don't know what the reality is because everybody avoids them. Everybody is getting around all the blocks and restrictions that they've put in place because they've actually got to get shit done. Classical security teams often value really hard technical skills. They want like the best engineers. They want the hacker that's never left their mother's basement. And they put to the side the softer interpersonal skills that are really key to building up a good, strong culture that people buy into. So if that's, and it's a very quick breeze through kind of classical security and where a lot of the failings are, what alternatives have we got? And I said, I'm going to give you some models of things that we've developed at Etsy that you can take for free away with you. Took us a while to get here. I'm not saying we got it on the first hit. We made lots of mistakes on the way. But these are the 3 principles that I run the security organization on at Etsy. And I don't know any other organization that publishes their security principles out to across their rest of the organization so they can understand, buy in, and ask questions. So the first one is that we're enabling. And the second one is that we're transparent. And the third one is that we're blameless. And we're going to dig into each one of those very quickly. So enabling. How do I measure my security team's success? Are they doing the good things? A security team's success should be measured on what they enable, what they facilitate, not by what they block. Traditional security teams will measure themselves on what they have stopped. Transparent. If you're a security team that's open as to what you're doing and why you're doing it, you're spreading that understanding, you're sharing that knowledge, you're getting people to buy in, and they're understanding what you're doing. You're not locking yourself away and saying, like a secret squirrel, I can't tell you what I'm doing because I'm too important and it's too special. And blameless. I can guarantee you, security failures will happen. It doesn't matter how much you invest in your security program. It doesn't matter how good your security engineers are. Security failures will happen. There is people that spend their entire lives, like me, breaking into organizations. We never fail. Security failures will happen. Don't blame people when they do. It's never a single person's fault. An organization is a complex system. Complex systems fail in complex ways. Complex failures never have a single source of failure. These principles, I believe, really help share the responsibility of security out among an organization. It helps create these shared objectives when we're thinking about culture, and it allows that culture to begin to form around those shared objectives. People understand why security is important. People understand why they should care. So that's all kind of very abstract, high-level principles and theories and methodologies. What are some things that we can kind of actually give you examples of what we do at Etsy that you can take away, maybe back to your organization, that could be useful for you pretty quickly on? Great culture needs great people. It depends on them. If you take nothing else away from this talk and you have a security team or you're building a security team, take this away. Number 1 rule of hiring a team: don't hire assholes. I see it time and time again. I have worked in those teams. They're full of people that are very ego-driven. They think they're smarter than everybody else, and they take pleasure from belittling the people that don't know about security because it's not their job. And so it turns the rest of those people off to ever engaging with those teams. If you do inadvertently hire one, or you inherit one because you've inherited the team, remove them ASAP. Get rid of them. Sounds bad. It's probably one of the biggest things that you can do to build security culture at your organization. Abrasive members, and I'm sure we've all had experiences with security teams that have abrasive members, and you can change abrasive to be a variety of other words, will be the single biggest factor that undermines a progressive approach to your security organization, that will undermine people buying in and wanting to interact with your security team. You need to value social skills as high as technical skills. In terms of hiring at Etsy, I'd say for every single security engineer role that we have, we would probably interview 4 to 6 people, give or take. And this is in-person interview. I don't even know what the average number of resumes and phone screens that we would go through. 4 to 6 people, and we'd normally do 2 rounds of that, and then we'll find one person that fits that balance of they've got excellent technical skills, but they've also got excellent social skills. They can hold a conversation. They don't shy away when the blinds are opened. They are able to interact with the rest of the organization in ways that the rest of the organization feel is appropriate for social interaction. And obviously, the people on the security team need to fit with the overall with the overall company culture, whatever that culture may be at your organization. So hiring good people, making sure that the security team is staffed with good people who aren't just technical, is key. If you get that wrong, everything else is going to be really difficult to build on and move forward. If you've got that right, then you can start to do things like security outreach. And security outreach is distinct from education. Don't blur the two. Security education, super important, not undermining it. Security outreach, also super important. All it is about building relationships between the security team and everybody else across the organization, building up trusted relationships between them. And if you focus on the building relationships, then when incidents happen, when difficult conversations that need to happen, when you need to go over to someone and be like, we're getting a lot of alerts from your system, can we kind of work with you to work out what's going on? It's going to be much easier because there's an existing relationship that's there that you can have those conversations based on. Also, if a person in a different team that knows nothing about security because that's not their job, if they've got a problem and they've got a relationship with somebody on the security team, they are far more likely to come to you with that problem and you'll become aware of it. If they don't have relationships with people on the security team, they will hide it. If your security team is a group of assholes and people take problems to them and then they're made fun of or they're belittled, they won't go to them and you won't know what's going on in your organization. It really can be as simple as buying cakes and beer. I assign budget per month to buy cakes and beer. It's the best budget line item I have. And it will be the best ROI that you see in terms of getting people to really buy into a fledgling security culture. This is a great quote from Cory Doctorow in his book, Information Doesn't Want to Be Free. Sociable conversation is the inevitable product of socializing. Sociable conversation is the way that human beings establish trusted relationships among themselves. If you're thinking about security outreach, take this quote and think about how you can make that manifest in your organization. Boot camps. Boot camps are a thing that we do at Etsy with all teams, not just security, but security buys into it heavily. This is where people who are new to the company get 1 week with a variety of different teams. They'll normally spend 6 to 8 weeks boot camping when they're new to the company, and they'll spend 1 week with different teams all across the company. Front-end infrastructure, performance, operations, security. Different people have different preferences what they want to do, but we have a security boot camp. This really enables people to see kind of behind the curtain. They can see what's going on in the security team. They can see the things that we're dealing with day to day. They internalize it. They build great relationships with the team over that week because they're working with them. And then they take all of that knowledge and those relationships back to the team that they're going to permanently work on, whatever team across the company that may be. And now they've kind of become what we term a security champion. They're there for us. They're eyes and ears. They'll let us know when things don't feel right. It's not that they're a spy. It's just that they understand what we're fighting against and they want to help us. Secure ergonomics, a word that I completely made up. Kind of like security and ergonomics, but what I've seen in many, many, many organizations is that the security team hide themselves away because they like to feel special. They'll put themselves in a room that needs like a swipe pass to get in, and darkened windows, and no one's allowed in there because they're special, they're security people. Worst thing that you can do. Putting your security team in an ivory tower is dumb. My security teams sit in the busiest part of the office. There's a thoroughfare on the way to one of the main kitchens. That is where they sit. They sit in the place that people see them the most. They sit in the place where people pass them every single hour of the day. What this means is, if anyone's got a problem, they're much more likely to be able to approach them because they're passing them. And if we know that something's gone on or we need to have a quick word with someone, we can do it in a really informal way that doesn't make people feel kind of persecuted if security come up to their desk and sit down. It also means that we've got these huge dashboards. I haven't got a picture of it, unfortunately, but big, big screen monitors, and we've got all sorts of graphs going on them, all sorts of different things happening there. People stop and look and want to know what's happening on those graphs because they look kind of cool, which is the point. Secret, that's the point. We want them to stop. So we've got all of these there. If we were locked away in a room, people wouldn't see them. People wouldn't engage with us. People wouldn't have those socializing conversations that build trusted relationships. And the other secret, and this comes out of the line item budget on security outreach, security candy. It's the most popular thing that I do, and it's probably one of the best spends that I make. We buy boxes and boxes and boxes of candy. It's like a candy store at the end of the security pod. Everybody knows it's there. We've got commands in the IRC channel so people can check what's in stock and what's not. We've got scales underneath it. We actually graph consumption, and then we do all sorts of spurious correlations between the amount of candy that was being eaten and an incident that was going on or an outage that happened at the company. It's stupid, but it's fun, and people love it, and people come and get the candy, and they interact with the security team. It costs me a couple of $100 a month for some boxes of gummy bears, and I get interaction from all different parts of the company with the security team directly face-to-face. So, I told you this was a lightning talk, and it really is, so we've got to wrap up, unfortunately. Like I say, I've probably got another 60 to 90 minutes worth of stuff behind that, so if you're ever having trouble getting to sleep, I'm sure you can find one of the videos online. But final thoughts. people matter as much, and possibly more in many circumstances, as technology when we're thinking about security. If we want to build an effective security organization, we need to be people-focused, and therefore we need culture. We need to think about culture, and we need to be focused on actually building one and putting all the effort in to build and maintain that culture. It doesn't come for free. And enable, don't block. If you're a security team that's blocking, people will avoid you, and you will be the least effective that you can be. And if you take nothing away, enabling, transparent, and blameless, and you'll take a huge step forward in your security culture, huge step forward in your security organization, and your organization will thank you for doing them the service of keeping them secure and allowing them to continue to do what that organization is for. Any questions? Okay. So just in case people didn't hear the question, I'm going to brutally summarize it, is obviously I'm coming from outside of Iceland. I'm coming from an American perspective or possibly even a UK perspective way back. And how does kind of that perspective fit in with the Icelandic culture, which is, a distinct in its own culture, which is very different than the US culture? And I agree, is absolutely different. I have actually, with being involved with Syndis, I have actually spent a lot of time in Iceland over the last kind of 7 to 8 years. So I feel like at least I've got some insight to Icelandic culture. And I think the biggest trait of that culture that I feel kind of fits in with respect to security and something which I feel is of note is I've spoken to many different Icelandic companies from banks and financials through to tech, through to very small startups. And the sense of kind of isolation that I think physically manifests here, because you are kind of a removed nation out, and it's a small number of people, and there is kind of trust in amongst society itself, I think inhibits the natural adoption of kind of cybersecurity and information security mindsets, because people have that kind of isolationist view just naturally from the wider culture here. So I think that's something that I've noticed has been a different starting point to get people thinking about security is many Icelandic companies would, and this is very summarizing it, they would be, but that's somebody else's problem. That happens somewhere else. And obviously with the internet, it's kind of, there isn't a somewhere else. We're all in the same place. So I think that's one of the things that I've noticed, how to bridge that gap and how to make people not feel so isolated. I would point back to some of the things that we've said about, kind of actually sharing why security is important with a company, with the rest of the people at a company, and hope that they kind of begin to understand that it is actually applicable to them and they can't just hide away from it. Did that somewhat help?
Okay, I think we are out of time. Let's give Rich a round of applause.
Thank you.